Hello, I'm Martin Dowden, and this is the Scottish Football Podcast on Wednesday, the 1st of October. And today we're taking a close look at all things Aberdeen. How do they get themselves out of the mess they're in? What's going wrong for the Dons, and more importantly, why is it happening?
We'll do it for Motherwell. 2 goals in stoppage time. Give them the victory over beleaguered Aberdeen.
Are there any silver linings for anxious punters? Jimmy Thelin's 3-year project looks set to continue, so what can they expect in the Conference League opener tomorrow?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Quick hellos to all 3 of our guests today. Our producer has gone full chairman mode here, throwing all his resources at the problem. Not content with 2, with 3 despairing desperados with Don's leanings. Firstly, Michael Grant of The Times, JJ Bull, the international football music superstar and football analyst, and Glen Schreuder, Don's fan, who's part of the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. I can tell you the production team and myself have been trying to G the 3 of these guys up for the last 15 minutes. Absolutely depressing bunch at the moment, and no wonder. Winless in 6 games, 9 conceded, no goals scored, rooted to the bottom of the Premiership. No team failed to score in their first 6 league games since the Dons themselves back in the 99-2000 season. Who will I start with? Michael, what's the problem? What's the solution?
Well, this sounds very West Coast media when you just trot out all these negative stuff.
Here we go, deflection.
What did you say? What's the problem? Where do you start, really? It's been an absolute horror show so far. And really, I suppose, it's underlined by the fact that the team hasn't scored any goals in the league, which is a fairly fundamental flaw, and it's kind of undermining everything. I mean, I would argue that there's been quite a lot of games where they have been in the match and they've been competitive, and defensively, actually, the numbers are not that bad for a team rooted at the bottom of the league. There's 2 or 3 teams in the division with a poorer defensive record, including Dundee United, who have had a really good start to the season. So that is not the fundamental problem. The problem is that they're creating a reasonable number of chances. They're creating, JJ will tell us, I'm sure, but they're creating a number of chances in games, but they're just not taking them. The conversion rate is really poor. I don't think there are areas of the team that just haven't either gelled yet or haven't really looked convincing yet. We don't know. I think you could probably pick more than 3 people to put on a Don's podcast, Martin, and it doesn't matter how many you put on, they wouldn't agree about the best midfield and the best wingers and the best striking options to put. But so far, none of it has worked. They've not had a good enough return for the signings. Spent a good amount of money, invested a good amount of money in the summer. They've not had that return yet. I think there's a lot of good talent there. And of course, I guess the central theme of this pod will be the manager, and is the manager getting enough out of them? At the moment, he isn't. Okay,
JJ Bull, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what's going on with it. I think it's interesting with the expected goals numbers. So depending on the model you look at, I think Y-Scout's wildly different to what Who Scored has got. Not wildly, it's a small variance, maybe 6.6 in one and maybe 6.7 in another. But basically, they have created quite a lot of XG. The only thing is, like, the XG per shot is really low, so it's like 0.09 according to Who Scored. Regardless of the stat, what I'm trying to say is the chances they are creating aren't very good. So they are creating chances, but they're not of high value. And so players are missing chances, yes, like they're missing them close in. But if you go through a lot of the shots, a lot of them are kind of quite early and they're kind of rushing. And it's because Thelin, like, the other numbers show that the idea is to play over the top quickly, like through, get the ball forward quickly, chase it up, 1v1 with the defenders, and then generate chances that way, which I thought might work if the out of possession stuff following up afterwards goes along with it, but that keeps not working. And so it seems like it might, it's in the last couple of days I've started to realise it might actually be a fairly unsustainable way of generating chances. And the reason I've come up with like noticing this is because I've been doing a lot of research also into Man United recently, and that's exactly the problem they've got. Is they create chances, but they're not really chances. Like if you're shooting from left half space on your left foot and you're 25 yards out, you'll generate 0.2 xg, but you're not going to score it really. So like, there's just loads of chances that keep being generated that aren't that high value. But I mean, you could expect more from some of the players, but I think the things you see them trying to do when they get the ball wide and then try and get the ball low into the box, that would generate high XG chances, but the crosses are always poor. And so it is a mixture of system and individuals, like bad decisions, either shooting too early, not playing the pass when they could, not getting into sustainably, not having like a settled shape in the final third so you can generate decent chances, and then just the delivery being awful. It's consistent.
Glenn, let's bring you in. Do you agree with everything that's been said? And if you could maybe focus on Jimmy Thelin's role, clearly he's getting backed for now. Do you think that's right?
I think it's right for now. I do think, Sunday's league game against Dundee is going to be crucial, I think, to either retain or lose a large part of the support that is maybe 50-50 on the manager just now. But the guys have kind of really summed up a lot of my feelings. I think Michael's right in the sense that, we have a good squad. There's talent there. I think certainly at the weekend we missed Stuart Armstrong in that midfield, but it's not clicking. But JJ's also spot on. The kind of individual mistakes that are being made. The crosses is something that I've highlighted as being terrible, especially set pieces. We failed to beat the first man, and then your chance conversion again. You just need to look at the weekend. Topi Keskinen has options, shoots into the side netting, and Marko Lazetic as well when he doesn't take on the opportunity maybe initially to chip the Motherwell goalkeeper. He does have options either sides and chooses the weaker option. So I kind of feel a bit sorry for Jimmy Thelin in a sense, because there is quality there, but as Michael said, he's not quite getting a tune out of it. And I also agree that I think all three of us would probably come up with a different midfield combination. So I could sit here and say that Jimmy Thelin not found his best Aberdeen 11 yet, but I don't think you would find a group of Aberdeen fans that could probably agree on the same starting 11 either.
Michael, the term 3-year project's been put out there. I think the club are keen to try and push that as far as they can, but it's inevitable, isn't it, in the coming weeks, that if things don't turn, that they're going to have to abandon that 3-year project?
Yeah, they are. I was actually going to just bring up that phrase with you, Martin, because it's one we hear a lot about Aberdeen. I think the only relevance it has really is in sending out a message that the club would be patient and would be determined to stick with Jimmy Thelin for as long as possible. The other phrase that Dave Cormack used when they appointed him was he would anchor the club for years, and that does send out a clear message. But I think it's now irrelevant, the 3-year idea, because he's almost living week to week at the moment with these results being as poor as they are. I would love him to get to see out the 3 years or more. I think there's still enormous affection and goodwill for Thelin amongst the Aberdeen supporters, obviously because of the Scottish Cup victory. But even more than that, he's clearly a good guy. He was unanimously supported. By the way, the appointment was unanimously supported by fans, or as close as you can get, who liked the idea of bringing in a foreign progressive coach, with an entertaining way of playing and a bit of experience and a track record. And of course, we all enjoyed the start last season. The start last season was the polar opposite of what we're seeing now, where maybe the team was kind of punching slightly above its weight, but you had so many players that were delivering and contributing. And now it feels it's hard to see who is, And listen, part of that is confidence. I do think that when a goal comes, sounds terrible, doesn't it? When we finally get a goal, but I do think when a goal comes, it'll lift the place, it'll lift the mood, and the players will maybe just begin to move and interact with a bit more freedom. I think there's a lot of stress around the club at the moment, on the field, off the field, in the boardroom. Clearly the directors and the board are getting it in the neck a little bit when they're out and about. That's going to intensify if if the next couple of games go badly. I agree with Glenn. I think Dundee is looming as a big fixture for Aberdeen. You can, I'm not saying you write off Shakhtar Donetsk, but they're a really good side coming to Pittodrie, and Aberdeen are not in a good shape, But I think if they were to lose the Dundee game, or again to not score against Dundee just before an international break, I think the board then would have a serious decision to make about what it does. At the moment, they are with Thelin still. I think the phrase I've heard is like there's been a fatigue around the club about sacking managers. We ploughed through managers recently: McInnes, Glass, Goodwin, Robson. You need to do everything you can to try and break that cycle, but you can't stick with a manager who keeps losing. And the very prospect of being in a relegation battle or getting detached from the bottom is too horrific to contemplate, and they would have to do something.
Yeah, I can't get this image, Michael, of you in the dressing room just saying, just score one goal. Just one, and this will all be resolved.
Well, I guess the three of us here have actually seen Aberdeen score a goal this season, it sounds, like something fantasy world out of Tolkien or something like that, but we got 3 against Morton, and I wasn't at that game, but I was at the FCSB game where they scored twice, so it's doable.
Scoring a goal is doable. JJ, I mean, look, because of where I operate, rather than any West Coast bias, as Michael might put it, I've been to Ibrox quite a lot this season, and it's been absolutely toxic. The fans absolutely berating the coaching staff there. I haven't actually seen Aberdeen in the flesh this season. What's your sense of where the fans are right now? Could it get to the point where we're seeing what we're seeing maybe at Ibrox and in Celtic Park for different reasons?
It's kind of funny. I think the fans, I think everyone wants Thelin to do well. This is the thing. So everyone acknowledges it's not good, but everyone feels like they want it to be good. But if he's not winning, probably have to cut it. But it was been through this so often recently, and it's been a similar story for every manager basically under Cormac that's come in. Glass had really good underlying numbers, but awful on the pitch. It's McInnes normally. It was really the only one who had the numbers. It wasn't that great fun to watch, but the numbers were always decent as well. But everyone else is massively underperforming essentially, and they've put so much squad churn. You have characters who've been there for a long time, especially players like Shinnie, who you have there's character there, so it's not like you're missing that sort of thing. But I think one of the things with Thelin is that sometimes it doesn't matter how good his ideas are or how good a coach he is. If it's not working with the players and they just don't have confidence in it, and they can't get this, they can't be galvanized and have this confidence that they need. Exactly what Michael's talking about. If you don't have the confidence, you can't commit to doing the things you need to do to make the system work. You have to be full on. They got his last team in Sweden got so many yellow cards, committing so many fouls. Aberdeen don't really do that. They don't really play with the same energy. I don't want to say passion, that's the wrong word, but aggression, intensity. There's something that lacks in it, and then you see the lack of quality in the final third, but you can make up for that with a more intense kind of style of play. I just wonder whether that is something that you can do with the right sort of players, but they don't have those ones to do that. And so he started changing the system now a little bit. I think it was 3-4-3 the other day, and it looked immediately much better. It's just because you had your wing backs higher, so your inside wingers, what you want to call them, were just a bit closer to the forward, and they just looked a bit better for especially the first half. And it's interesting now that he's started to change with it a bit, because I think he has to. It's that Jose Mourinho quote: "If you die by your ideas, you're a fool," or something like that.
Yeah, Glenn, what do you make of the formation? There's a lot spoken about the approach in the Scottish Cup final that clearly paid off in the end, and then Jimmy Thelin seems to stick fairly rigidly to what he wants to do. Is now the time to just, I don't know, be a bit more pragmatic? If you're not scoring goals, don't lose them.
Yeah, well, I think JJ made a good point earlier when he spoke about Man United and Ruben Amorim, and I kind of feel there's a slight comparison between Jimmy Thelin and Amorim, because both are very much stubborn in their approach and very reluctant to change it, even though the results aren't forthcoming. As JJ said, changing against Motherwell and we did look better, albeit it's a very low bar to look better from what we've seen this season. But I do think Jimmy Thelin has to be more willing to, change his formation, adapt his style. Obviously, I don't think we can play our normal style against Shakhtar on Thursday. I think that they'll pick us apart at ease. But again, you look back to the Livingston game and he plays two defensive holding midfielders at home to Livingston. I don't personally feel that's the right way about it. I think certainly at home against, with the greatest respect to both Livingston and Falkirk, we should have a more attack-minded approach rather than be sitting back. So I think what helped Jimmy Thelin slightly at the weekend was he did show willingness to change. Martin, as you allude to, the Scottish Cup final, when he does make probably the biggest change of his managerial career at Aberdeen, pays off with such great success. Fans will then look back at it and ask, why aren't we making those changes? And I think as long as he's showing willingness to adapt, that will kind of maybe afford some leniency with the support, because I think that was certainly part of the growing frustration in the opening 4 games, was that it was just sticking with the same ideas and we were getting the same results. So he's got to show willingness, and then I think the fans will slightly appease. I think, on your earlier question to JJ as well, I think the fan support at Motherwell was terrific throughout the game. You mentioned Ibrox. The fans certainly there don't back the team throughout the game, and I think the Aberdeen fans, whilst the game's at least going on for the large part, will stick with the team because, as both Michael and JJ have alluded to, the majority want Jimmy to do well. There isn't, I don't think, a large majority yet that are going to Pittodrie wanting the manager out.
Martin, I was just going to say that that Dundee United game that Glenn was mentioning, after it, quite a lot was made about the Aberdeen support and the reaction to the performance and to Thelin, and there was a chant about getting sacked in the morning, but I would say that a clear majority did not engage with that chant. I mean, there was plenty of anger towards the team and to the manager, but it was a minority who did that. And I could see, because I was in that end, and you could see that people were kind of wrestling with, do we get involved in this? And the majority didn't, and I think that was quite significant. So he still has that goodwill. I'm told that Jimmy Thelin was really down that night, and with that performance and with that result, and he did feel a bit more optimistic on the back of the Motherwell performance and the attitude and the kind of work rate that he got from the players. I thought there was a bit more intensity in terms of the pressing and the just winning balls in the midfield and so on, which you just have to do that in this league. You have to fight. So I'm told that he was a bit more kind of upbeat after that, relatively upbeat after that performance. So I suspect that. Listen, sadly, we're now in a place where we don't know how many more games he's going to get. If they keep losing, it's not going to be many. But I do think we'll see this formation a bit more often now, because I think he could see green shoots in that.
But I do think on that as well, like, as much as the buck stops with the manager, ultimately, if the results don't improve, the players also need to take a long, hard look at themselves. JJ mentioned the poor choices with the chances, the mistakes. You just need to look at Mitov's mistake as well. Yeah, he's made some good saves, but players also need to own up and take a bit of ownership in this poor run of form as well.
Glenn, I think that's a great point. It doesn't just apply here to Aberdeen. I think that gets lost in most of these situations, that the players are the people that go out over the white line and have to deliver. And I think fans forget that sometimes. JJ, overall, I think I'm right in saying, and I'm completely stealing the research of one of my colleagues who threw this into the mix the other day, but I think I'm right in saying that Jimmy Thelin's record at Aberdeen over the last 33 games is worse in the Premiership than St Johnstone's when they hit the split last season. That's not good.
No, I think that's bad. I would like it to correct if possible. But I mean, everything we're talking about, it's so interesting because, like, I think a lot of the problems are to do with the tactical system. I think a lot of the problems are to do with individuals not executing it the way you want. And so, and the thing is, if a couple of the dominoes fall down or just aren't there, then you can't play the way you want to make it work. And like looking at the saying exactly about the players not stepping up, I was watching the Aberdeen game in a really busy London pub, a football pub, And when Mitov let that goal in, the entire pub who weren't watching the game were suddenly watching it, and everyone groaned, like, oh no, because it seemed like Aberdeen really had it. But the thing that I also found watching it is that I was getting excited when we were stringing 3, 4, 5 passes together in a row because that doesn't happen. I know that sounds stupid, but like I like watching teams when they can pass the ball. And so often what we have is that we get the ball from the back and then it gets into as soon as it crosses the other half, it's like they're in a training game where they're told it's like it's a hot potato, and so they have to get rid of it. And it means, like I said earlier, you can't get to the final third in any sort of sustained manner. So you're always going to chuck it forward and chase it up. And then exactly what Glenn's saying about playing that two defensive midfielders. If you play Nielsen and Shinnie against a team who are going to sit back and attack with like only 2 or 3 players at any one time, you don't need 2 holding players. But you need the characters in your team to try and galvanise everyone and get them up the pitch and try and make them forward. So that midfield choice kind of makes sense to that regard. But I love Graham Shinnie. I think he's one of my favourite Aberdeen players of all time. His passing, like sometimes just even the tiny like sideways pass, the weight or the angle is wrong, and the player receiving it has to stop and then slows down the move. And it's so nitpicky, but so many passes from the midfield, they go forward. I don't want to pick on Shinnie specifically because, like, again, I love the guy. But you have any midfielder trying to play it forward. There's slight weighting, angle issues, and the player receiving the ball often has to stop in the movement. And the whole thing with Thelин's movement is it's meant to go forward all the time. So if you're not able to do that, what are you going to do? And so you end up with a winger 1v1 with no support, and then their striker can't even catch up because they're deep trying to help as well. And so it doesn't work. And all these individual things mean that you get frustrated, you start not trusting it, and you end up with a run that is not ideal.
Not ideal, yes. Well put. I'm just going to throw this open to any one of the 3 of you. Can anyone put a positive spin in this tie against Shakhtar Donetsk tomorrow night, starting the Conference League campaign?
Absolutely.
I think it's an opportunity to, a distraction, if you want to call it, a free hit to restart. As Michael said, I don't think anybody's going into this game necessarily with an expectation that we're going to win the game. I think as long as we can give a good account of ourselves, even if we can do a goal and get that confidence, as Michael said earlier, to instill into the fans, let alone the players, we can build on that. And I think, as JJ said, seeing some of the positive shoots from Saturday night's game, build on that and use that for me, what is a crucial game against Dundee at the weekend. I don't care how it comes, Martin.
There'll be an open top bus parade down Union Street when we get a goal the next time. The thing is that they've actually been okay in the European games, Matt, and even I know it's 2 seasons ago now, but I mean the domestic campaign 2 seasons ago wasn't great, but there was some really solid and respectable results in the European games that were competitive in all of the group games in the Conference League, and they competed. I mean, it's daft to say that this season they've scored twice against the FCSB Steaua Bucharest, who are arguably as good a side as they've played in the season so far, and they scored twice. So they do seem to be able to, or hopefully they have been able to kind of rouse themselves for these games. It's almost like they bring a focus, and maybe there's a bit of fear factor that if we're not on it today, we're going to get beaten. That said, Donetsk have started the season really well and look a really good side. I think the main thing is don't take an absolute battering. Don't lose 4-5 or more in front of your own fans who are already on the point of, eruption about the way things are going, and completely leave the place flat ahead of Dundee, which is a massive game coming up at the weekend.
I think there's a weird thing with the way that Thelin plays his football, in that it suits playing against teams who are better than you. Because if you're without the ball, then you can do these balls on the top, and you can use the pace of people like Keskinen, who then might actually have space finally. But when you play in Scotland, and like the managers are all good managers in Scotland, and so they just can set up accordingly and just adjust for it, sit back a little bit, and then they can easily take Aberdeen apart. And so I think in Europe, there's a chance that you just get to do it the way you want to do it, and you can win. Like people often reference the Scottish Cup and the Scottish Cup final. And I thought we were awful. It was like 18% possession. I think it's just these things that happen sometimes in football. You're playing against a team who are so much better than you. Like Celtic are so much better, but you can make things happen in a one-off game. But as we see in the league so consistently, you can't do it. But in Europa Conference League, I think we're going to play against every single team will be better than Aberdeen. Not player for player, but I think just quality, especially with momentum and confidence, going to be so much better. So I think exactly what we just said here. There's a good chance for a reset and probably a strong chance to win the whole thing.
Yep, that's where we're going to end it. Brilliant, JJ. A nice positive note.
Sorry, Martin, like JJ's point as well, I think that Jimmy Thelin's almost suited to a bit of cup football as well, these one-off games. His cup record speaks for itself as well, so I'll just give another straw there for fans to clutch onto.
Yeah, well done, Glenn. I love it. Bit of positivity again. Remember, Dons fans, things can change very, very quickly. We could be sitting here in 2 months' time talking about an extended unbeaten run, and things might be rosy in the garden. That's all we've got time for. Many thanks to JJ, Glenn and Michael. Thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. Make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Thank you very much for listening.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.